It's really, really amazing to be here. I'm sending solidarity greetings from the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. We're really, really proud to be part of this coalition that's caused this really, really important protest here today. We condemn absolutely the deployment of British troops and RAF fighter jets that have joined over 15,000 Polish troops on the border where refugees are trapped. These are very vulnerable people. Many have fled wars like the illegal war on Iraq that killed hundreds of thousands of people and displaced over 3 million more. Wars that Britain has been essentially involved in and has a direct responsibility for. The Polish government is presenting the refugees as a dangerous force that Poland needs to be defended from. Refugees who have been allowed to die of hypothermia in the woods. This is absolutely sickening. As a member state of NATO, the military alliance, Poland has invoked the collective defence principle, which calls on its NATO allies like Britain to come and protect it. But this is a humanitarian crisis, not a military conflict. The Polish and the British government should be granting asylum for these refugees, not whipping up hatred against them, not terrorising them with huge military presence, and not dangerously escalating tensions with Belarus and Russia. But this is what Johnson's Global Britain is all about. Stirring up conflict, making the world more dangerous, and, ironically, defending Fortress Europe. What the British government should be doing is taking concrete action to tackle the real global threats we all face, of climate change and the pandemic, not pouring billions into war and more nuclear weapons. So we say, get the British troops out, get the NATO troops out, get all the troops out now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. That was brilliant. Our next speaker, I'm very pleased to welcome. I'm very pleased to say that actually, let's take some issues to people on Zoom meetings. So I am very pleased to welcome into German and like to give you, I'd like to ask you to give into German some more warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abby, and it's great to be here. I think for all of us who are involved in campaigning against war, against racism, for those of us who are socialists who care about the environment and all these questions, it is so important for us to be here today. Because what we've seen on the Polish border is one of the most disgusting things that we have seen in modern times. It is an absolute travesty of justice that people who have been made refugees because of war, people who come from Afghanistan, people who come from Syria, people who come from Iraq. These are people who would not be on the border if we hadn't invaded their countries, if we hadn't bombed country after country, if we hadn't spent billions and billions of pounds on these wars, which should have been much better spent on people abroad and people here at home. And when you hear that 100 British soldiers are going to Poland to build a wall to keep out refugees, I, for one, as a British citizen, would say, not in my name. They are not doing it in my name, and they shouldn't be doing it in the name of anybody else either. We have a situation now where even on the most humanitarian grounds, we must oppose what is going on. But this isn't just about humanitarianism. All of us must feel horrified at people who are dying in these forests on the Poland-Belarus border. But let's remember who is responsible for this. We have a system of imperialism which is created this.
No me.
The imperialist rivalries going on. But let's remember the main enemy is here at home. And while Boris Johnson may have left the European Union, the least he is 110% behind persecuting the refugees. Plus, all of the rich countries are saying you are not welcome to come here if you're from the poorest countries. If you are making war, if you are facing climate change, if you are facing poverty, we do not want you. We must take a very difficult message from our
Am I putting the
Nice to see you. Joel.
Excuse me. I'm one of the national officers in the National Education Union. Our union is absolutely committed to supporting and standing in solidarity with refugees and to fighting against racism. The Education Union partner resources with refugees and resources skills and materials on our website to support our members هلا عمر، أنا عارف حضرتك بصورة بس الأول خلص أنت ما راح تستنى.
increasing hostility of our government structures. I know our members of the we know that it is essential that we start influence appointment rights and the negative politicians speak. We know our job is always to stand with the oppressed. I'm going to read you a poem now that was written.
Mohammed, you okay?
Are we not allowed to connect to hands?
Just says it all to me. I like the it's called quotas. It used to be 4,000 of the most deserving. 4,000 of the most deserving of the 4 million currently in place. 1,000 in a million. The 4 million currently camping in Jordan and Lebanon. So 1 in 1,000. 1 in 1,000 of the 4 million Syrians. They're not the Afghans, but the Iraqis. It used to be these and only them. These most deserving of the all deserving filling up the camp. They're not ones drowning in the sea or suffocating in strikes. Not the ones depressed on the railroad. Not those babies carried through the night or trying to see how great it is. It's just these kids, how sheltered. We think this woman who has lost her home or this man who has lost his leg. Which are
Thousands of refugees, families, children who are paying the price. Having to shoulder the ocean in sub-zero conditions across our drinking water, many have become the relief of the Dutch government and they have different practices violently in the Belarus. Those people trapped in this forest are driven by the hope of a better life, by a hope to find human rights, find democracy. They're lured by the promises of sort of Eastern Europe things on putting out of these things like human rights, and they are let down very badly. They're coming from war-torn countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, and repressive countries, regimes like Eritrea. And the same way as those refugees were trying to make their way over the Mediterranean Sea, knowing that their chances of survival are 50-50, they have no way back. Violent pushbacks are happening not just in Poland, they are also happening in Bulgaria, Croatia, in Greece, everywhere around the European borders. Amnesty International is demanding from the Polish government to lift the state of emergency, to allow all refugees to enter Poland and make an asylum claim. The right to seek asylum is a universal human right which has got to be respected, but we are also demanding for Europe to end the cynical cooperation, for example, with Libya in the Mediterranean Sea, where certain rescuers outsourced to the Libyan Coast Guard were returning refugees to torture, rape, abuse and extortion in Libya. We are demanding for people to be able to claim the right to asylum and for safe and legal routes. And we're also demanding for a reinstatement of certain rescue in the Mediterranean Sea and the support for all those NGOs who are trying to do that. Refugees, welcome.
Thank you, Ulrika. Say it loud, say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here.
Say it loud, say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here.
Come on, say it loud, say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here.
Say it loud, say it clear.
Refugees are welcome here.
Now I'm really pleased to introduce a fantastic anti-racist activist, writer, educator from the Jewish Socialist Group, David Rosenberg.
Greetings from the Jewish Socialist Group. This is an issue that feels very close to our hearts. Many of our members have family roots in the region where acts of gross inhumanity towards refugees are currently taking place. Two of my grandparents were born in Poland. Two of my partners in Belarus. When they came here, they certainly were not greeted with a welcome sign. They had to endure Britain's first hostile environment, which had the same deep resentment and animosity towards those seeking freedom, safety and a better life for their families was expressed here as it is today in Poland and many EU countries. In 1905, Britain's Tory government passed a law, the Aliens Act, from which all of our country's inhumane immigration and refugee legislation is descended and has since been made even more severe. That experience leaves an imprint. For some Jews, the answer was to forge their own nationalism, not us. As Jewish socialists and as proud internationalists, we offer instead unconditional support to migrants, refugees and minorities today. We fight for equality for all, against nationalism and against racism. We fight for the rights of human beings to cross borders when they need to and when they wish to. We work for a world where no one feels that they have to flee for their safety, freedom and human rights. I want to say something about the forest at the border with Belarus, where the Polish government have built a 2-mile militarised zone with fencing, barbed wire, shelter checkpoints, where a team of British military personnel have been welcomed to help them keep their cities down, but where human rights bullies are pushed away. Those forests are very close to the site that during World War II housed the Nazi death camp of Sobibor. Last month was the anniversary of the Sobibor uprising, when 300 Jewish inmates overpowered guards and escaped to the forest, those same forests. Some found shelter with local friendly families, but the majority were hunted down by ultra-nationalist Polish partisans who opposed German occupation but were anti-Semitic too. Today the Polish government instructs local families in those same villages near the forest to report to police and the border guards about those who, quote, look as if they don't belong.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And i.e. they're Africans or those who come from what imperialists call the Middle East. This is what our government is shamefully supporting. And this is not an aberration for our government. Since March 2020, the Tories have been partnering the Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, anti-Roma, anti-refugee Polish government in leading a very right-wing group in the Council of Europe that also includes AfD from Germany, Vox in Spain, Salvini's party in Italy and other far-right parties. We say solidarity with migrants and refugees, solidarity with Polish organisations fighting for migrant and refugee rights, women's rights and combating the appalling and hateful anti-Semitic slogans that were chanted at nationalist marches in Poland just 9 days ago. To migrants and refugees the world over, we recall the 19th century Polish slogan, which was repeated by Polish Jewish and non-Jewish volunteers in the Spanish Civil War and printed on the masthead of underground resistance papers in Yiddish in the Warsaw Ghetto. And that slogan is, for your and our freedom. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. That was brilliant as always. I'd now like to welcome our next speaker, who is here from Finsbury Park Mosque, and he's been a wonderful campaigner against Islamophobia, and he's always getting involved in all these different campaigns against Islamophobia and racism, and he's obviously here to defend refugee rights and condemn what's happening on the Polish border. So without further ado, I'd now like to introduce Mohammed Kozbor.
Thank you, Sally. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I just would like to start with saying that these refugees are human beings like us.
Yeah.
Yes.
They are women, children, old men, stuck in the border, in the middle of a forest, without food, without shelter, without heating. People are dying there. They are dying. and no one cares about it. And unfortunately, it's happening in the middle of Europe, in the so-called civilized country, which is not civilized at all. These people, they are not coming here for a luxury life. They are not looking for a luxury life. They are coming here because they've been driven from their country because of the war, of the insecurity in their countries. They left behind their loved ones. They left behind their families. They left behind their properties. They left behind their memories to come and have a decent life somewhere else, away from war and from insecurity. Is this the way we treat them? Is this the way we treat them? No! Unfortunately, most of these refugees are from the Muslim countries. From countries which we as West governments are responsible on war in their countries, occupying their countries, Afghanistan, Iraq, and partially Syria and Yemen. Our governments, European governments, are partially responsible for what's going on over there. And therefore, it is a disgrace that the Polish government and some other politicians, European politicians, saying that we won't allow them because they are from these countries. They are Muslims. And here we come to Islamophobia. Islamophobia is not anymore local Islamophobia. What's going on here in the UK or in Europe? Islamophobia is global now. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in countries like China against the Muslim Uyghurs. It's happening in Myanmar against the Muslims there. It's happening in India against Muslims there. It's happening in occupied territories in Palestine against the Palestinians. It's happening, unfortunately, in authoritarian countries and dictatorship countries in the Middle East against their own people. This is what we call Islamophobia now. It is global. It is, we heard about COVID-19 pandemics. We have Islamophobia pandemic. It is a pandemic, it is a disease, which we all have to fight it wherever it is. And I'm glad today that we are here together. My final message is, let's get together to fight Islamophobia and to try our best to allow these refugees who are desperate to come here, to allow them to come, whether it is to the UK or to any other European countries. This is our responsibility, our human responsibility, our moral responsibility. Let's do it. Let's work together on that. And I thank Stand Up to Racism for their effort on that. And we would be happy to work with everyone to try our best to allow these refugees to have a decent life somewhere else, away from war, away from insecurity. Thank you very much.
Thank you in solidarity, Mohammed. We stand with you in the fight against Islamophobia. Brick by brick, wall by wall, Fortress Europe has to fall. Brick by brick, wall by wall,
Fortress Europe has to fall.
I'm now pleased to welcome another trade unionist from the RNT Trade Union. Please welcome Alex Gordon.
Thank you, Shirley. My name's Alex Gordon. I'm a member of the RNT Union, Secretary of the Paddington branch, which you could argue is the local branch of our union here in central London. Very proud to be here to bring the support of RNT members to this demonstration in support of the rights of refugees, and to say very clearly that transport workers all over the world are responsible for the safe conduct and the traffic of migrants and refugees on a daily basis. We see the streams of people throughout the world who are forced to flee their homes because of imperialism, because of the constant wars which our government and other imperialist governments are responsible for imposing throughout the world, but in particular in the Arab countries of Syria, of Iraq, and in North Africa. And I'm delighted to come here today with so many people to say clearly that the policy of Fortress Europe is an imperialist policy. Fortress Europe is an imperialist entity. Fortress Europe is a racist Europe. And it is about time that we said clearly in this country that it's a great thing that we're out of Fortress Europe. We're out of the European Union. What is a disgrace is, as you've heard from this platform from speakers before me, that there are British troops being sent to reinforce the borders of Fortress Europe, even though Britain is not a member of the EU. And that is something that we have a responsibility to call out. It is something that we have a responsibility to challenge. The other thing I want to say is that the role of the British media is absolutely disgraceful in reporting this story, as it is disgraceful in reporting so many other stories. The British media would have you believe that President Lukashenko is responsible for world imperialism. They would have you believe that President Lukashenko has sent hundreds of thousands of refugees across the world fleeing from the wars which our governments are responsible for. There is a huge act of deceit being perpetrated by those people down the other end of this street, in the BBC, in Broadcasting House, on the people of this country and the people of the world, in trying to pretend that British governments, that the US government, that the French and other European governments are not the governments who are responsible for the desperate humanity that we can see on the borders of Belarus and Poland today. So I'm really proud to be here. We've got to call out a lot of lies coming from that place down the street there in Broadcasting House. We've got to stand in solidarity with refugees and with migrants, and we've not just got to worry about the appalling scenes taking place with tear gas being used by Polish police, Polish riot police, Polish troops on the borders of Belarus. We should be talking about the crimes being committed against humanity by Fortress Europe in the Mediterranean, which is a graveyard for hundreds of thousands, numberless refugees from Africa and from the Middle East, and those people who have perished and are still perishing in the waters of the Mediterranean, trying to get into Europe because of the wars supported with our taxes, by our armies and by our governments. So it's great that we're here today, but let's call an end to this hypocrisy being perpetrated on the people of this country by British political parties and British media who want to pretend that they have nothing to do with the reasons for this human tragedy taking place. We will not end the terrible plight of refugees until we challenge imperialism, and that means challenging the role of our own government, especially when it's sending our troops to reinforce the borders of Fortress Europe, which we are not supposed to be a member of any longer. Thank you very much for coming today. Solidarity, comrades.
Thank you, that was fantastic. Tories out, refugees in. Tories out,
Refugees in!
Tories out,
Refugees in!
Tories out.
Refugees in!
I'm now pleased to welcome co-convener of demonstrators that will organise today's protest, Wayman Bennett.
I want to start off by thanking everybody for coming out this demonstration. And we want to send a message to our government. I won't repeat what everybody's already said.